Hello and welcome to another edition of Video Games to the Max. I'm your host Sean Gomer, and here with me, not Mark Morris. I'm glad to have Jeff Young from Analog Stick Gaming here with me today. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. Thanks for having me
So,
on.
oh man, it's awesome to have you on. So, you live in Canada?
Yeah,
How is
yeah.
it up there at this time of?
Well, we've got like a lot of wildfires going on right now, so a
Oh
lot of the
wow,
air is super bad.
gosh,
Just like Calgary is just. You look at pictures of it, and it's just like if it was like screenshots out of like that, like Mad Max or even like that, like desert kind of looking area in the new Blade Runner. It looks like that. It's just really really bad. Even out past Edmonton is just horrific. I saw a TikTok earlier of just fires literally just
God.
right there. So it's pretty scary right now, but otherwise it's not too bad.
Well, thankfully you are surviving that right now and able to be with me here. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we are gonna get into more Legends of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom talk because you've been playing that as well, Jeff. Some other games we're playing. That got some PlayStation Showcase predictions because that is happening
Mm-hmm.
on
Oh yeah.
Wednesday, and a few other things we're going to talk about. All of that right after this.
You are listening to Video Games to the Max.
All right. Well, again, if this is your first time listening or this is your 100th time listening or watching, we always appreciate you here. Got to do the housekeeping to sell, well, not really sell anything, but just to get y'all to know where you're at and to subscribe or, listen later. So you can watch live. That kind of varies depending on, obviously, I got to go with, I'm having to rotate guests around. So I have to work around Jeff's schedule. And right now we're live here on a Sunday afternoon, evening. But we try to keep it around Sunday, Mondays. But you can watch on Twitch, on YouTube, W2 Network, all of that. You can also just wait till it's on demand on YouTube. If you ring that bell, follow, subscribe, all that, you get whenever there is a show, it'll pop up. Obviously, there's other things on the channel. It's not just gaming related. So if you like entertainment stuff, movies, TV shows, all that, the Relative Broadcasting folks got you. I'm pretty sure they're gonna have the Fast X review sometime tonight or tomorrow, which I did watch, so I'll have that to talk about too. And then we also do this on podcasts, which it doesn't come out immediately on the podcast. I do edit some there, so uh, you know it does come out a few hours later or perhaps the next day, but it is there. You just go search Video Games to the Max on wherever podcasts are, and you can go subscribe there. And whenever we do a show, it'll be there for you. So with that, getting that out of the way, Jeff, how far are you in Legends of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom?
Um, I don't know my overall runtime. I'm pretty far into the story parts, I think, right now. Like I'm still kind of going around collecting shrines and all that kind of stuff. But in regards to some of the story beats, I've done a good number of them. I don't know how many of there is, but I know I have, I think, two of the memory cutscenes left. So that's got to be pretty far into the game. But it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, so you got hooked in the story because all I keep seeing is everybody building stuff and
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
I'm still doing that as well too. I mean, like it's like my biggest issues that I had with Breath of the Wild was it didn't have your traditional temples. That was a big turnoff for me because that's some of my favorite stuff. And then you've also got like Hyrule just felt a little empty, at least for my tastes. I know a lot of people said that they kind of loved that aspect of it. And Tears of the Kingdom pretty much writes the ship for almost everything that I kind of want from a Zelda game. Like my favorite Zelda is still Wind Waker. I don't think anything's going to change that. But I would say this is probably a strong second or third for me. It's just it's the type of game that you can get distracted by the tiniest little thing. So if your objective is right there and you see it, by the time you get to that objective, you probably could have found 4 or 5 things, and all of a sudden it's 6 hours later and you're like, oh right, I was heading in that direction. And it does a very, very good job of balancing that stuff with a lot of new mechanics, a lot of new systems. The building stuff is incredibly fun, and it's an absolutely massive game that I honestly can't believe that Nintendo pulled off, especially as something that's like 16 gigs. And it runs fine, you know, like it's the Switch hardware, it's old hardware. But the fact that they were able to actually pull off this game is just a technological achievement. It is extremely well done.
So, like, is this a continuation directly of Breath of the Wild? Like, do you see
Oh yeah,
some of that? Is there more story in this one than the last game? Because there was a lot of complaints of the story's kind of not really
yeah.
there.
There's a lot of story in this one. Like Breath of the Wild, like I honestly couldn't remember. I don't think I can really remember too much of the story of that one, just because again how minimalistic it was, which is why like I really loved that Age of Calamity, the Hyrule Warriors, because like it put story kind of first and foremost with a lot of that stuff. And this is a direct continuation of Breath of the Wild. It takes place, I don't know, probably maybe a year or so after. I'm not exactly too sure. I don't know if they actually pinpoint it, but it takes place immediately following. It is like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's on the same map, it's going to be boring. It doesn't feel like the same map in some ways. Like you'll go to some places and you're like, oh, I've been here, I know this place, and so on and so forth. But they kind of flip things on their head a little ways with the kind of the upheaval that's kind of happened. So there's like big chasms in the ground and there's the sky islands and stuff. So it's got a lot more going to how it uses that map. It doesn't feel like the same map. And I think that if you were playing Breath of the Wild right up until Tears of the Kingdom, you would probably have that little burnout of that map. But I mean, I haven't played Breath of the Wild since it came out. So like I've kind of, you know, wiped the slate clean in terms of like remembering everything. Like I'm going into areas going, oh yeah, I remember this, I remember that, and so on and so forth. But there's enough changes to the map and enough diversity to the different tiers of how that map works that kind of give that game a lot bigger scale than I think people were imagining, because it's not just the sky islands that have been added to the map. There's some massive things that you can explore and find.
So when you're talking about like the new stuff, as far as like whether it's the send thing or Ultra Hand and building stuff, like does that all work pretty seamlessly with the Switch? Like you run into any
Yeah, I mean,
issues? Or?
like the powers that you have this time around, they're not 100% different than what you were kind of doing before. Ascend is a completely different matter. That's the type of mechanic that I think most developers would be scared to add, because like they feel that you could break the game, but they do a fantastic job designing the levels so that you can't take advantage of it too much, but you can in some respects break the game with certain powers. But I think Nintendo took a look at what everybody was doing with like the Zelda videos and stuff of like people like hitting something and then flying across the map and whatnot, like a lot of the speedrun strats and a lot of like the kind of comical stuff. And they're like, well, let's just embrace that. And so they made a lot of abilities and powers of allowing you to do that. And I mean, the building stuff is pretty cool. Like it's a very like Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts type of thing where you're just making vehicles and all sorts of stuff, or solving every puzzle with a bridge. I mean, that has been, yeah, like they'll be like, oh, I need to get over there, and I'll build a bridge that's like 3 times farther than I need to go just because it's so much fun. But yeah, the mechanics are all pretty good. I will say the only major gripe that I have with this game is there's 36 different mechanics across all the different buttons. Or that's what it feels like. It's like if you
Right.
have like 15 buttons, there's 40 things that you can do. So the gymnastics to pull that stuff off can be a little taxing to try and remember, because the amount of times I've accidentally thrown a weapon, or the amount of times I've accidentally selected the camera when I'm trying to lift something, like it can be a bit much. So I think like Breath of the Wild, you could get a younger player in there, no problem. Tears of the Kingdom, I think, requires a level of controller comfortability that I don't know if you're going to get to a younger player, at least in a way that they are going to excel without some assistance, because the controller gymnastics are massive in this game. And that's really like my only major complaint from what I played so far.
Like, where does this sit amongst your other games that you've played so far this year? Is this kind of in your top?
I mean, it's not going to be my game of the year. I don't think it's going to hit that. Like, if I was to score it right now without experiencing the rest of the game, it would be pretty much a 9.5. There's a few little frustrations that I have with it. But it'll definitely be, I think, in my top 10 for the year. It could even be in my top 5 for sure. But no, it's an absolutely fantastic game. There's a reason why I turn on my Switch and every single one of my friends is playing Tears of the Kingdom. Like, it's one of those games that have kind of shown that you don't need to be the biggest, flashiest AAA game. You just need to make something that resonates with your audience, regardless of its visuals. But no, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing that I feel like is they took everything that made Breath of the Wild great and then just kind of expanded upon it and then added things into it to just go, okay, let's just let you do whatever. And I know that's probably for some people like, I don't know if I wanted them to get even bigger in scope. It was already too big. But I think it helps them understand of like, okay, this is what, we kind of want to let them have that freedom with Zelda. Zelda is about experiencing that adventure for yourself. You just had Anuma come on and say that he kind of sees this as a future of Zelda for a while. Like, you think there's something here for like another game?
Well, I mean, they definitely won't be able to piggyback off this one again. It would have to be a complete reimagining. So I think that you would have to sacrifice maybe some of the stuff that makes this game what it is so that the other game has an identity. Because otherwise they're going to go, oh, it's just more Tears of the Kingdom. It's more Breath of the Wild. And I don't think they can get away with that again. So it's hard to say exactly how they could go bigger. It's like, I know a lot of people really like the tried and true stuff, like even like the remake of Link's Awakening, and just like smaller stuff. I think that there's a place for both. I think they could have another team. Like, Nintendo's been pretty good at letting like third-party companies handle their properties. So I think that could be a very cool thing, because like Ubisoft made probably one of the best Mario games in years. But yeah, like, I think that there is a place for this. I think there is a future of being an open world Zelda game. But again, it has to be entirely different. And I think the way you do that is with a completely different art style. And I think that's going to be the biggest departure for the next Zelda. Is I think you're going to get something. I mean, it's likely going to be on the next hardware. So the graphical fidelity is going to do a lot of that heavy lifting as well. But I think all the stuff that people really love about Tears of the Kingdom, the building and that kind of stuff, I don't see that returning. I think that would be too much of a pull of a previous idea, because that's the gimmick of this game. So the next one needs a different gimmick. If that's co-op, who knows? But I think it's going to have its own type of magic, I think. And I think it needs that. So whether it's open world or whatever the case is.
Yeah, that's my thought too, of just thinking about like, how could you possibly even go higher than what this is? Like, this is already feels like, how did you get to this? And then how do they expand upon that to add even more? You already added the sky. I mean, what are you going to do? Let people go like underground in the water? I mean, it's incredible sometimes, like you said, that this is even on a Switch to begin with.
Yeah, it's a massive game for Switch. Like, if people were intimidated by the scale of Breath of the Wild, this game is 3 times more intimidating.
Yeah, that's like Breath of the Wild. I tried to play it a little bit again like yesterday, just to be like, was I missing something? And I might give it more of a shot, but I didn't want to make that mistake. Obviously, I bought Zelda with the Switch when it came out, so it's been there. But it's like, I don't want to make that mistake of spending $60 on something that it doesn't vibe with me. You know, I'm like I love Link to the Past, I like Ocarina of Time, all that, but this was kind of like it's too open for me. It's like too much. I like open world games a little bit, but I'm mostly like give me a little bit of direction, right? Like this is like okay, go out there, do whatever, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I think the one thing that this game does differently than some open worlds is you can almost see everything around you at almost any given time. Like when you're playing Elden Ring and that world itself is massive, you're never in a
right,
position where you can see the horizon at almost every single point of gameplay. So with Zelda, like it feels like a much bigger, massive open world that we're kind of used to because we get that elevation of being in the sky, being in the clouds. And you don't get that with too much stuff. Like, Geralt isn't making some type of like floating harness for him and Roach to like fly up into the sky. In Witcher, it's
right.
all ground based. And you get some of that sky based stuff in Elden Ring with various sorts of where you're going and all that kind of stuff, but nothing like this. Like this is absolutely massive. Like there's so much to explore here, and you see almost all of it at any given time. The draw distance is fairly remarkable given the hardware. Like this is a game that, yeah, it doesn't run amazing, but the technical stuff that they've done here is unbelievably impressive. And I mean, like, I also give shout outs because like the main reason why this game runs as good as it does is Monolith Soft, the team
Yeah,
behind Xenoblade Chronicles. Like they have been Nintendo's like smoking gun for the longest time. I mean, they helped with like all the Splatoon games. They've helped with all like the Breath of the Wild and this game. Like you go on their list of the games that they've helped with development, and it's staggering to see how important that studio is. Not to mention making what 5 Xenoblade Chronicle releases for the
yeah.
Switch. So that team is like that is like I think one of they're my favorite developer by far because of their contributions and the quality of their work. And you see it here in spades.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy how they helped on both Zeldas and made that a possibility, and then Xenoblade Chronicles 3. People forget how massive that game is, and you're like, wow, they made that. It runs on the Switch. You don't really have issues with how it runs, and then
It was
you
almost
see
my game
other
of the
game.
year.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it was for me because I didn't. I'm not a Dark Souls guy, so Elden Ring didn't go into my
Yeah,
vernacular for that year. But
my
yeah.
game of the year for that year was Chained Echoes,
Oh
which
yeah.
was that like almost like Super Nintendo looking
The
JRPG.
RPG, the JRPG. Yeah.
Unbelievably good game. But yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely people need to take advantage while that thing's on Game Pass and play that because it's actually a great throwback RPG for a while, you know. I was so excited for Sea of Stars and I kind of just was like, oh, let me just pop this in. People have been talking about it, and I started playing Chain
Yeah.
Echoes and I was like, you know what, I can wait for Sea of Stars for a while. This is really good. This is
Yeah,
great, you know.
Sea of Stars is my next one in terms of
Yeah,
like that kind of stuff. And it's weird because like I'm not a massive JRPG guy, like where I'm
right.
playing everything, but the stuff that I do play makes it definitely some of my favorite stuff.
Oh, for sure. So just to get into some, you told me you were playing this game called Showgunners, and yeah,
Yes, and no one's talking about this game. It's basically like if you took um, what is it? Like Smash TV and kind of made it almost like it's like XCOM meets Smash TV. So for
okay,
anyone who doesn't know what Smash TV is, it was like a televised blood sport essentially, where the cameras were on, you had the audience and all that kind of stuff. And Showgunners is a XCOM style game where you play basically as an inmate, or it's like people can volunteer. Some are prisoners and some are bounty hunters. And you play basically as Scarlet, who's this bounty hunter who has come into the game to get revenge. And you'll basically take all your turns in an XCOM like manner where you're worrying about whether you're behind cover, your percentages of hit, the different weapons and abilities you have. You'll get more people on your team as the game progresses. There's an announcer that shouts all the play by play stuff. It's super bloody, it's super gory, and it is unbelievably fun. It's got every difficulty setting that you possibly want. It's fantastic. It doesn't run great on the Steam Deck, but I played about half of it on the Steam Deck before it started crashing too much. And then I just picked up my save back up on Steam on my laptop. And it is just fun. It used to be called Homicidal All-Stars, which is why you'll see imagery in the trailer that say Homicidal All-Stars, but they changed the name to Showgunners for marketing reasons. But it's fantastic. It's got a demo if you want to try it out. But it's definitely worth getting. If you're looking for like that XCOM like kind of gameplay, it's exactly that. It's not similar. It's pretty much exactly XCOM. Your characters are not like, it's not procedural in that way. Like you're not like losing a character and then hiring people on. They're set personalities.
Yeah.
And it's like what's really neat is like you'll be in a level and then the show host will be like, no, you're doing this too easy. And then he'll drop like acid canisters everywhere, or he'll like turn C4 on like all of the walls, and you have to get the buttons in a certain amount of turns, or the whole stage blows up. And then in between stages are like Diablo like isometric things where you're running around avoiding traps, talking to fans. Your interactions with your fans will have a bearing on your sponsors. So if you're a smartass, there's a sponsor going, hey, we're looking for a smartass, we want you. And then you'll click them, and then you get a perk on
That's
like
funny.
certain things like faster reloading and stuff. And it is just really good, really fantastic. I would love to see a follow-up. And I think it's only on Steam right now. I don't think there's plans on consoles. I'm not sure. But it is unbelievably good, and no one's talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the trailer and like some of the gameplay, I'm like, oh, this is incredible. This is like insane. It's yeah, exactly. It reminds me of XCOM, but with like some just crazy stuff going on. Which you kind of need to add things like that to make it, I guess, interesting for more than just the tactical gameplay folks. So like definitely like you said, the announcer was just like so over the top. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, and
crazy.
in between episodes, you can go into the confessions booth and they sit in the chair, and then the producer asks some questions about the match, and then there's like dialogue trees. Like there's some really, really neat stuff. One level has like where there's a train going, so then you have to avoid the train on the turns. And I've like used Scarlet's ability to like freeze an enemy in place on the tracks, and then just watch the train just smash right into them.
Oh, that's awesome!
It's fun. It's super fun. And it's
It'd be cool if they did get to release that on console.
Yeah, that would be fantastic because it plays extremely well with a controller.
Yeah, they probably is it like an indie studio doing it?
I don't know. I'm not 100% too sure.
Yeah. They probably want to, I guess, wait to see on sales and see if they'll then put it on console. But it'd be cool if they did before the end of the year. I would probably check it out for sure. Just my laptop is not very gaming focused. So
yeah, it's like the Steam Deck ran it great up until it just started freezing at one point, like just instantly in one level. I don't know if it was just that level, but up until then it ran perfect. It actually ran better on it than my laptop, and then I just switched to my laptop because it kept freezing.
Well, I mean, at least you got it. Hopefully they'll get that fixed at some point.
Well, it's not verified either, so it's not
okay. It's
right. So
yeah, that's why I've been looking at that Raj Ally for that reason of just it's on Windows. Maybe it will run things better than having to do things with the Steam part of it. But
yeah, like it runs Windows. That's the biggest problem, I think, for that type of thing, just because that's a resource hog with a lot of stuff.
Right.
That and the 1080p screen is going to reduce battery.
Oh yeah, the fact that they said like if you want to run it at anything close to 60 frames, it's going to last like an hour. It's like, well, I might as well not be thinking about having this run portably at all because it's going to die within a moment of basically starting to play it. So that's the only thing that
it looks good though
about that. Yeah. I mean, for sure, if you're anybody that's, watching or listening, a big fan of that kind of combat in the game, I think it's worth checking out. Literally just called Showgunners. You can go find that. I think I saw it on Steam. So yeah, I mean, anything else you want to? I know you said one of them was embargoed, obviously, but
can't talk about that one. I got about 4 days left. But no, like other things and stuff, I've been swapping in between like Disney Speedstorm, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It's their racing game, and that's been super fun. I mean, the microtransaction stuff is what it is. It hasn't really affected me that much, really at all. But I'm surprised at how early access this is, because I don't think it's got a release date for like a year yet.
Yeah.
But it's been pretty fun. I've been spending some time in that as well, and played a couple levels of the one that you're going to talk about here is Bat Boy.
Yeah. How are you liking it? Because it's
Well, I'm only about. I just finished the first and second of the bosses. Well, I mean, like there's the first boss, and then there's the second and third of like your traditional bosses that you're going to fight. So I've defeated 3 bosses essentially. Just looking how to improve my health and stamina now, because I got the seeds, but I don't know how to use them yet.
Yeah.
But
that's where I'm at too. I found those shops, and I'm kind of like, well, you don't really tell me what I'm supposed to do with these. So
yeah, like I don't know if there's like a garden we unlock later, and then we plant the seeds, and then it creates a thing. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, it's kind of like a Shovel Knight meets Mega Man type of thing.
Yeah,
like one boss, like the one that does the sort of sprint dashes.
Yeah.
His second form, I literally just bounced on top of him like 7 times and killed him. And
yeah, it took me. That's the technical, like the first one, right?
It's the guy that he's wearing like blue and gold armor. Okay, and he does these like dash attacks at you, and you have to, and then he throws stuff. And the first form, I would just jump, let him teleport, hit down, slash, and do that about 7 times. But then the second form, I literally just went bounce, 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 bounce on him and killed him in one shot. Granted, that was like 25 tries later.
Right, exactly.
And then I did the exact same thing for the girl that you fight next. I basically just did that dash attack. So I think that's the winning strat. But it's fun. Like, yeah, like it's like Shovel Knight meets Mega Man.
Yeah, I do like that. Like each of the levels are varied. They're obviously based around an element that is usually tied into the power of whatever one of the next boss that you're gonna fight. Which they technically the story is pretty simple. It's this dude, weird warlord, comes from wherever, and he takes your whole crew of y'all are all some kind of crime fighting people at a school or ish.
Yeah.
And he just takes them all in with him except for Bat Boy. And
yeah, because he uses the bat and like ricochets that a power. Yeah. And then it hits a bird.
Yeah, it hits a bird, and then the bird winds up being like your companion kind of thing. And it runs near the messenger a little bit with the jokes that they try to crack in there too. But yeah, it has the color palette of Shovel Knight with some of the powers from Shovel Knight, and then it has obviously like the Mega Man type bosses with how you get the powers at the end. And then they do a little tutorial before every next level to show you how to use that power, which I find actually helpful, so that you remember that you have these powers actually. And then obviously they try to put that into like the one I'm in now, which is after the next. So after you beat the girl, you go into this like water level.
Okay.
And the next one after that's like a fire level, and then you actually start using the one where you get from the girl, which is the like hook shot kind of thing.
Yeah, the hook shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I've had fun with it. I don't think it's very long from what it looks like, and I also love the overworld. Looks like Mario 3.
Yeah, and the levels aren't really that long at all either. Too like they don't sort of wear.
You might die a few times trying to get through each part until you kind of figure it out and you go on. And I do appreciate that they have some. I feel the checkpoints are kind of balanced for the most part.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, because there was times I was just like, I hope this is not one of those where they're expecting me to go through and you only get one checkpoint through the entire thing. And they actually give you quite a few.
When they did the baseball, like all the baseball analogies and stuff, and I'm sitting here and I've died, and it goes strike 2, I'm like, crap, I probably have 1 life left. And then all of a sudden I'm at like strike 15 and strike 16. It's like, okay.
I'm like, oh, okay. It doesn't actually like measure you on the how many strikes you do or anything.
Yeah.
the fire level also has football players, so it's like I guess they keep going with the sports theme later on.
Oh, nice.
But
Yeah, it seems
yeah,
seems pretty fun so far. Like, yeah, like I had a code just kind of randomly sent my way, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll check it out. And no, it's been kind of fun so far. I mean, it's like 240 megs or
yeah,
something like that.
it's
So I mean, like
it's
you kind of get
8-bit,
what you get.
like
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that comes out on Thursday or Wednesday, Thursday. So yeah, anybody that's been interested in the two weeks that I've talked about it, you can go get it on I think pretty much anything, starting Thursday. So
Hmm.
there you go. And I've played more Octopath Traveler. I think I'm in everybody's chapter 4s and chapter 5s now. So I'm almost getting there, but it feels like every time which the stories are amazing in this game. I don't know if you have you
I
played it at
played the
all.
first one.
Okay.
I didn't quite have the budget to kind of jump in on this one or the time really.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing I'll say to people that play Octopath Traveler on a TV, if you have a 3D compatible TV, turn that 3D mode on and play it that way because holy crap, do those like sort of like diorama set pieces
Yeah.
absolutely pop in 3D. But
Oh,
no,
that's
like
cool.
I really like Octopath in regards to kind of what it does from an artistic point. I think a lot of studios are kind of jumping in on that same art style, which might kind of dilute that what is it 2.5 HD or whatever they call it.
Yeah, the HD
Because I think
2D. Yeah.
yeah, because I think there's that Suikoden game that's coming out that has like the same visual style. But
Well, I mean,
no,
Square's done it in a lot of their games recently, so that's the thing too. Square's kind of pushing
oh
that
yeah, Live
along.
Alive they did
Yeah.
they swapped it to that too. Yeah.
I think they said they didn't want to do it for for Tactics Ogre, but they thought about it, and then obviously
Hmm.
there's the Dragon Quest III remake that still hasn't come out yet. That's gonna
Gotcha.
have it too. So,
Yeah, it looked like a
um,
fun game.
yeah, I mean it's it's a lot of it doesn't change from the first one, at least the battle system and everything. It's the stories are way better in this game, I felt like, than the first one. But I'm like 90 something hours in, and I'm just now getting to the chapter 4s. So I agree with
Yeah.
you on the time commitment thing. Sometimes I'm like, why did I ask for this game
Hmm.
again? So yeah, it's taken a while, but I feel like I dropped off on the first one because some of the stories kind of just were like,
Yeah, the stories didn't really
yeah,
connect, and I mean, like, it was kind of neat, like how all the characters had some sense of interaction with like
right.
that game's final battle with how they handled everything, but the interconnection to the storylines just wasn't really there in that way. And I know that was one thing that they addressed in this one because like the stories
Yes.
connect a lot better.
They actually have interconnected stories with two protagonists, and they have little stories apart from them. They connect them when you're fighting, and then they obviously have the final boss part that whole final like hour or two. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but apparently that is just a total interconnectedness. And they also have like little banter, like t- um Tails moments where they kind of like, oh, you press
Okay,
start and they all kind of one of them will talk to another one about something that you just went through.
nice.
So it kind of feels like they are more in a group, even though when they do those solo stories, they're not there except for when you're actually battling. So
Hmm.
you know, yeah. But overall, I feel like they really nailed it much better with this one. So it will probably be in my kind of game of the year talk. But I mean, so was the Future Redeem DLC, which I beat that last week. That's
Yeah, I have to
totally
get
worth
back
it
to
too.
that.
Yeah,
I've had so many codes come in and then Zelda and stuff, and I'm like, I want to get back to it so bad
yeah.
because like
I'm
3 is
I'm the
just so
same way with
good.
you. That I'm like, thankfully there is a little bit of a lull here, and then all of a sudden in June it's going to explode again. So forget that. You get Street Fighter, Diablo, and then Final Fantasy, and it's going to be
Yeah, I
ridiculous.
just pre-ordered Street Fighter. I'm not big enough for Capcom yet.
Yeah,
And I've had Diablo pre-order for a while as well too, just because of all the betas.
right. Uh, I I'm kind of like just all right. Let's get there. Let's get there and then we'll see what happens. But all those games are going to be huge, big talkers, big movements
And then
for
there's
the
hours
games.
and hours of Summer Game Fest to
Oh
watch and all that
God,
stuff.
yeah,
So it's like, oh my God, you're either watching video game news or you're basically playing
or
video games, and
playing.
it's
Yep.
just overlapping.
Yeah, I can't wait till they give us a million things to go have to figure out on Summer Games Fest, and then however long that's going to take. They've gotten better about it not being like a whole month long, but
Yeah.
still feel like sometimes it's like overbearing how much news you have to parse through.
Especially like the one thing I liked about E3, and the only really thing I liked about E3 was how it kind of consolidated everything into like a couple of days, because now you have like, you know, the Play On game showcase, the PC game showcase, then you have the THQ showcase. Like there's everybody and their dog has a showcase now.
Yeah.
And it makes it really hard for, I think, a lot of those things to stand out. Because like, how many people really watched the Koch Media one last year in regards to what it would have done showing just those trailers on like Summer Game Fest?
Right. That's the thing. Yeah, I agree with you. I've always had that stance. At first, when they first announced that, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is cool. We're just gonna get gaming news up the wazoo all the time." And then I'm like, we're about a week in, and I'm like, "Oh wow, this is way too much."
Well, there's live streams that have gone over
Yeah.
for the past couple days as well too, but a
Yeah.
lot of them they just get lost. Like they're
I had
just
no idea they had the I usually watch it, it has a name, the Cozy Game Showcase, or
yeah.
I had no idea it was even on, because I'm sitting here going, okay, I thought everything's going to happen around Summer Games Fest, and now, you know, obviously Sony's doing theirs, and then everybody else is going to do them. So, I mean, it's good to get out in front of it, but also the hype train is, you kind of got to promote it a little bit too. So, yeah, I mean, speaking of, you know, what we do here as far as, you know, being part of games meeting and all that, like we all started somewhere, right? So like, who did somebody get you into playing games? Did you just watch someone play a game one day and you got into it? And then what are some of your favorite genres, and I guess some of your best favorite games of all time there?
Well, yeah. So we'll kind of start from the top there. So yeah, like pretty much like my first console was the NES. That was like that was when it was new.
Right.
So like I'd played like ColecoVision, Atari, and all that stuff. I mean, I remember that TV controller where you slid the like little rectangle thing in there with all the different like clicky buttons and stuff. So like I've been around gaming since all that stuff. And I think in terms of like kind of what got me into gaming, like I think it was just seeing what that stuff was, you know, like playing those games, that interactivity of all that kind of stuff. Cause like it's also like getting lost in worlds. You know, people do that with books all the time.
Right.
And like I drew up drawing and stuff. So seeing like digital sprites and stuff moving around, like there was a lot of cool kind of artistic stuff in regards to that kind of stuff. So that was like a big part of it. And in regards to like my favorite genres and stuff, I'm going to cheat a little bit with this as well. Cause like my favorite genre, I think, is actually a subgenre that isn't actually a genre. And that's Eurojank games.
Okay.
They're some of my absolute favorite stuff, and like these are games that are primarily out of Europe. They essentially don't have the funds to satisfy the passion behind them. So games like like Spiders Interactive, for example, Greedfall, Steel Rising, Technomancer, Bound by Flame, things like that, or even Piranha Bytes with their Elix 2, like those types of games. Like I live for that stuff. Anytime I see a Eurojank game, I'm like, I am playing that. Because they're usually incredibly well-made games. They just lack the polish and budget to kind of get them over the finish line. So there is a little jankiness to it. But that's one of my absolute favorite genres. Otherwise, you know, I think it's like I love like RPGs and stuff, and I kind of categorize JRPGs in there as well too, because it's just they're all RPGs. It's just where they come from.
Right.
So things like Witcher 3, like Xenoblade Chronicles as well too, like that stuff's like big for me. I think like my favorite in the genre so far though is probably Legends of Heroes, which is like the Trails of Cold Steel. Like Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4 are 10 out of 10s for me. Like they are two of my absolute favorite games. Like I am so hyped for Trails into Reverie. That's going to be, I think, a strong contender for my game of the year, just because I love 3 and 4 so much. I also like third-person games, things like Gears, Resident Evil, stuff where you see your character. I think that stuff's always great because, like, I just like seeing my character, especially if there's like costumes and stuff like that. Like that stuff's never
Right.
made sense for me in first person. You know, it's like, oh, get this skin in like Overwatch. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to see it in the victory screen. Like, is that like when I'm playing, it's like the costume DLC and stuff for like Resident Evil or whatever, where I'm like, okay, Leon has cat ears. I can see the cat ears. Like, it actually makes sense. So I mean, that kind of stuff's always been kind of weird, but that was like those are definitely like my favorite sort of genres. And again, like third person isn't really a genre. It's like a type of game, because like the genres themselves are like, yours is like action horror in a lot of ways, same with Resident Evil, but then you get other third person games that are just Hi-Fi Rush, for example, which is my game of the year right now. Like, that's a absolutely fantastic third person game.
Yeah, I love Hi-Fi Rush too, so I'm gonna have a lot of which one do I end up choosing, because I love, rhythm games and then action games, so you tie it together and it's like, yes, and it did this great where I don't feel like I had an issue with Metal Hellsinger because it's very much tied to, or Chris the Necrodancer, where they're way too tied to the beat, where it's like, man, I can't catch this so far.
There was a rhythm game that came out a little while ago that was way too focused on the beat, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Metal Hellsinger, like, you could at least shoot, but if your shots were on the beat, but it was a game that I reviewed, Gun Jam. Yeah, Gun Jam. That one you couldn't shoot other than on the beat.
Oh wow!
So it was just not great. The aesthetic and all that kind of stuff were good, but it's not a game that I'd be like, oh, if you like Metal Hellsinger, you would like this. It feels entirely different.
Yeah, I mean, it helped too. The Hi-Fi Rush had that like awesome art style as well, with all the
it's one of the best looking games.
Yeah, it's just, I was like, man, not only does this look good, it plays fun. The music's great, even the stuff that's not licensed is really good too. So, and the fact that it's still like shocks me sometimes that like they just shadow dropped that thing. They weren't marketing the crap out of it. They just, okay, it's out, and it's like, wow, this is awesome. Like,
yeah, I think when you have an unexpected game like that if they would have announced this 4 or 5 months prior, people would have been scrutinizing it so much with Xbox.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whereas like Starfield, they can't shadow drop that. The marketing that's tied to that thing is insane. But with Hi-Fi Rush, there was no risk essentially with doing it that way. So like, it works for some games. It's not going to work for everything. Like, I'm not expecting Sony to shadow drop something, because like shadow drop can be a news bite as well too.
Right.
So like, it can have that type of press cycle, but it doesn't work for every game.
Well, Sony likes to, promote the crap out of the thing and then make it into it's going to be the next
pay to promote other people's games.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not that way, and that Xbox is kind of like, we just want to get the media share moment for that cycle, and okay, cool. And if it needs to have the big marketing thing, we'll do it. We'll do it in a weird way by trying to sell you a fridge or whatever, but each one has its own the way they do that. So we all kind of, you talked about your favorite genres and everything, favorite games. Did you like grow up reading any kind of game sites or game mags or?
Oh God, yeah. I don't know about gaming sites, since the internet was kind of, it wasn't really a thing for me growing up. Like, I'm old. I still remember freaking out when I found out how to disable the dial-up modem sound so that I could go on the computer at night. But gaming mags for sure. GamePro, EGM, PSN was probably my favorite, largely because they got artists that I really love, like J. Scott Campbell, Joe Mad, Adam Warren. They all did covers for that stuff. I mean, like, I'm 10 feet from a PSM magazine right now, pretty much. But any magazine that had a demo disc, that was the shit, man. Like, because we didn't have the internet to download demos and stuff. So like, you go to get the magazine, official Xbox magazine or whatever, and there was a demo disc in that thing. Like, oh my God, I love those. Like, I wish they
Yeah,
still did
man.
them, because like there was like cheat codes and all sorts of stuff to find hidden things on the discs and stuff. Like, I love watching the demo disc stuff that Giant Bomb's doing now, where they're like going through PlayStation Jam discs and stuff like that, or PlayStation Underground, and like checking all that stuff out. It's such a time capsule.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wish that they still did that. I love the fact when we had the Xbox Live Arcade stuff that those all had demos so you could play it and find things that you like that you wouldn't otherwise, because then you're having to obviously a little bit now it's a little bit easier because you can just watch someone play the game for a while
Or Game Pass,
or
essentially. Like all the
yeah,
Xbox Live Arcade games now are kind of like what Game Pass is kind of doing.
yeah, that's true. I mean, that's the thing that we didn't have as growing up. Is you're just reading something and having to go on somebody's review. You're not getting to play it yourself or watch someone play what is the actual game. So you're like, okay, this is kind of vibes with me. All right, I'll pick it up, whatever. So but like those hype cycles that you got to have with those magazines and things like that are always it's still a fun thing for me to go back and think about. But just when you would get those discs and be like, oh man, look at all these games here. I don't think I would ever play this if I'm just looking at it in a store, but it gave you the opportunity to kind of see different games.
There's tons of
That
games
yeah,
that I played the demo of, and just like I was like, this game is absolutely awesome.
yeah,
Because I think there was like a demo for like Mark of Cree, and then like
right,
I
yeah,
played that. I'm like, this is actually pretty good, and then I ended up buying Mark of Cree. So like those demo discs were great, but we had a lot less choice back then as well
yeah,
too.
exactly
We
too.
also had the ability to like rent a stuff, but
Yeah, people will say that, oh, Blockbuster is a dying thing. It's like it actually was cool to just go. I mean, I don't know about now. I don't know if I want to go in the store and be in there for 2 hours looking at stuff over and over. But when you're a kid and you want to like play a game, it gave you the opportunity to play a different game every time you went to Blockbuster, which is
when you didn't have
kind
an
of cool.
income of
Yeah,
buying 3 or 4 $60 games, you were lucky if you got $20 allowance or something for the
exactly.
month.
Yep.
So I
Just
rented a
saying.
lot.
Yeah, that it was fun getting to do that back then. So when you look at, I guess, gaming today as opposed to like how when we grew up, what stands out to you? Like what do you enjoy? What keeps you gaming today?
Well, like in regards to like gaming, kind of like when I grew up to gaming now, I think with any sort of interest, with when popularity hits it, it becomes something that's less of like created to be a hobby and more of like a business. So like
Mhm.
I remember when games were being made by 10 guys in a room,
Right.
and now we have an Assassin's Creed game that has like 1,000 people working on it. Gaming has kind of evolved so that there's like more diversity with representation, which in my opinion is for the better. More voices making more video
Mhm.
games is always great, because that's where creativity comes from. Like the next big mechanic might come from a small indie game out of Malaysia, right? Right. So
Right.
there's some really really cool stuff happening there. On the other side of the coin, there are some of the negatives that have kind of come around with this kind of stuff, and that's like business practices, DLC, microtransactions, which can be fine, but most
Mhm.
companies kind of overstep and go a bit too far with some of that stuff, and it kind of creates this toxicity towards developers and towards publishers and all sorts of stuff. It creates toxicity between fandoms for anything, basically. um, I think the biggest problems is that kind of stuff now. Like, on that particular thing, I think like gaming back then, if you said a game sucked, people were like, yeah, well, I like it. Now you say a game sucks and you're getting death threats on Twitter from some guy, right?
Yeah.
So like it's so stupid with that kind of stuff has grown, because like talking about video games back then, it was a very different hobby, because you didn't have that um, kind of being anonymous on Twitter to type your reply behind something that, if it's not something you were saying face to face to someone.
Right.
So it was a little bit different. So I think like gaming back then was healthy, clean, and fun in a lot of ways, and now
Yeah.
here it's
The
the
worst
gaming
thing
side
you
of it.
had is when you first started playing online, you had which you do still have now, but people that wanted to say nasty things to you, and you could just mute it, and that's it. And you keep
Yeah, the little
playing. Like,
13-year-old squeaker playing Call of
yeah,
Duty telling me I'm using hacks, I can just mute him.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, again, social media has done wonders for promoting stuff, but I think the discussions around games, I think, has not evolved in a good way.
Right.
Just with that kind of stuff.
I mean, and you've gone from playing games, from growing up with games, to like wanting to writing about games. You have your own site and everything. I like, what made you want to do that and keep doing
Well,
it?
I think for me, it kind of started out as like a mental health exercise, because like I have bad ADHD sometimes and a lot of anxiety and a lot of other types of issues. So focusing on something's kind of helped a lot. I lost a lot of my passion for like drawing, because I used to draw for like the longest time, and draw pretty much anything. Like I was rather good at it. But I started doing like Facebook reviews on games and stuff. I just had like a little thing called Loading Last Checkpoint, and I was going to take that, but it was already used several times over. So I created Analog Stick Gaming, because I'm generally a console gamer. Like I'll play on PC to a certain extent, but generally with controller, mouse and keyboard, very, very rarely. But then I took a writing gig with like a site that was looking for like volunteer writers, where they're like, we'll give you codes, and then like, you know, like if we go to PAX, we'll like get your PAX tickets and stuff. You just have to get transportation down there and stuff. And I wrote for that site for like, I think like 2 years or something. And then it just got to a point where I was just getting some criticism that I wasn't feeling was warranted. And I'm like, listen, like I'm doing all this voluntarily. If you were paying me, sure, okay, I would take that a little bit. But I mean, like I'm literally spending a lot of my money on games that I'm reviewing and getting some games back and all that kind of stuff. So there was that trade in. And then eventually I was just like, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this myself. And ended up getting Squarespace, which is a little bit more expensive than most gaming sites and stuff. But the ease of use of building a website was what I was looking for. And just using WordPress just wasn't going to cut it. So yeah, I've been building Analog Stick Gaming since 2017, around PAX Prime. A little bit after that is when I started Analog Stick Gaming. And so for the past like 6 years now, 5.5, 6 years, I've been kind of working that off, talking with like a variety of different publishers and developers and stuff. And at first I was kind of buying my own games, and then I would get the odd code and stuff. And like, you know, you kind of do a lot of like the indie codes to kind of get like a lot of the big codes. And then like once you start putting 400 or 500 reviews or 600 or 700 reviews on a website, you start generating some traffic. Like I think last year I was sitting at about 700 to 800 like unique visitors every month, which is not massive. But I'm sitting at more than double that now. And I'm starting to get like, you know, like when I was working at another site, the biggest codes we were getting were indie stuff. Like we weren't getting anything big. And now I'm getting like on my own, I'm just getting AAA stuff. Like I just got Jedi Survivor, which was massive. And so like I'm starting to get codes and going that route. And I'm just, my whole intention with Analog Stick Gaming was to create something that was a place for me to talk about games, because I love talking about games. I love talking about games, podcasts, doing reviews, whatever. I never made Analog Stick Gaming for clicks, for attention seeking, or anything like that. Like if I'm going to give Bravo Team a 1 out of 10 on PSVR, I'm going to give Bravo Team a 1 out of 10 on PSVR. Like I don't care if 17 people read that review or 1,700. Like for me, it was just creating that stuff. And like I try and get things out on embargo if I can, but I'm also working a 40-hour regular job and all that kind of stuff. So like this is just a hobby in a lot of ways. If I can make profit and generate income from it, sure. But I don't think I would ever get to a point where I'm making enough to survive. So it is just kind of in the background. So like I'll get stuff on, you know, if I get things early and whatnot, like there's some games I've got a month early. So I've had time to kind of prep a review and stuff. So I mean, like my Zelda review is probably going to be like at least a month out. Like I still have a half-written review for Marvel's Midnight Suns. I still have a half-written review for Hogwarts Legacy. Like there's some games I'm going to get around to, but any game I get a code for, that takes priority. So I got that stuff going. So my next review is a code-based game, and then the one after that will be like, you know, probably Bat Boy, and then hopefully Zelda and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, we have a very similar pass there as far as that goes. You know, the site that this podcast is technically with, I did at one point. I had a crew of people. We used to all write reviews. I mean, I still write for 411 Mania and Outer Haven, and Last Word on Gaming I'm with now as well. But I'm the same way as you. Like, a lot of times we're not getting anything early. Most of the time, like, I got Bad Boy early, but other stuff is usually like the day of. Same day that everybody else is buying it, they happen to get us the code that day. And actually, people should be surprised that that's how a lot of people get codes. It's not, a lot of people
Yeah.
do not get codes weeks out. That's IGN, GameSpot, and those people.
Yeah,
Everybody else gets the code the same day. Yeah.
I got Jedi Survivor the day before it came out. Like, it was out at 10 p.m. and I got it. Like, got the code that morning. But there's some games like I'm trying to think here. Like, yeah, it was like Trails of Cold Steel 4. I had for like a month before it came out.
Yeah, NIS is really good a lot of times about giving but like Persona 5, they gave it to us a month out. But then it's funny because then some of the other games, like after that, they started giving it to you later because of the whole they didn't want people how they are about putting out things early, or they didn't want too many people knowing the story and all that stuff. So
yeah.
But it's incredible sometimes how you go your own way and you actually find that it's better than doing it through other people that are just constantly, like you said, criticizing you, but they don't want to pay you. And it's like, can you really tell me anything when I'm here doing this and that and it's for free? So yeah, but that's a whole dichotomy on the gaming media industry in general, where it's the bottom of the totem pole and people treat it that way and either pay you peanuts or pay you nothing, thinking that, oh well, you love games, so you're going to take your time to write about them. And it's like, yeah, but you don't understand, I got to play this game a lot longer than it takes me to watch that movie. So
yeah, like it takes a while. Like for me, it's like I don't consider myself a fantastic writer, so I second guess a lot of my stuff. So I'll reread and edit and all that kind of stuff for days on end. Like there's some reviews that I can pull off in a day, and then most of them are like 3 to 4 days where I'm just kind of going through all that kind of stuff and rehashing it and changing it and stuff.
Imposter syndrome sets in, all that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was before Zelda and all that kind of stuff. Before I was getting codes and stuff, I was like set to review Redfall, so I've got like a partially written Redfall review. But I mean, I'll go eventually get to that stuff because like I'm not too concerned on the games that I'm playing when I'm putting the code out or when I'm putting the review out.
Right.
So that's why like codes and stuff like that stuff takes priority.
Right. No, you're right about that. You have to, because that obviously it goes to the publisher, and then they make that it can help or hurt you later when you need to ask for a code for them again. But yeah. So speaking of things that are happening in gaming, lots of feels like we're getting close to a showcase. So of course the console war stuff is happening even more than usual at the moment, and that's kind of a little bit of what's been happening this week. It feels like in the lead up to this, we have had Jim Ryan in a few interviews. He's talked about a few different things. One of them being PSVR 2 sales, where he was asked about by Famitsu about well, how do you feel about the reactions to PSVR 2? I mean, to be fair to them, it was only being sold by Sony itself on its website for a long while, and then they recently, I think like a few weeks ago, started selling them in stores. But we haven't really heard anything about sales outside of like I think a comment about, oh, they sold 270,000 in the first, like I think that was like around launch week sales. But after that, they haven't really said anything. But then you look at the PS5 sales, and they're constantly telling you how great those sales are. So, do you think that we should be worried about PSVR 2 and how it's doing? Is it too early? What is it?
Um,
Is it more about VR as a whole, or is it about PSVR 2 just being too expensive? What do you think?
I think it's like a combination of things because I don't think was Jim Ryan in charge of PlayStation back when PSVR came out.
I think that was Sean Layden. That was Sean
Yeah.
Layden for
So like
sure.
you've
Yeah.
got different leadership essentially on this end of it. And PlayStation VR, much like anything Sony has put out apart from its consoles, so the Vita, the PSP, has often been a thing that they look to third-party developers to really do the heavy lifting because like PlayStation themselves didn't really support PSVR that much. I
Yeah.
mean, like this one changed around a little bit when they had the Horizon game launch for it. But yeah, I think it is a little too early to kind of gauge it. I think the high price of the hardware has kept a lot of people just not wanting to have any part of it. Like when you create hardware that's more expensive than the system that it needs to play, that is a problem. So I
Right.
think if PSVR 2 takes a price cut to put it in a place where it is affordable, because you can get the Oculus Quest 2 or whatever, Meta Quest 2 or whatever it is, and that is its own unit for pretty much
Mm.
that price. And like it makes it a lot easier to get into VR because like I think even Phil Spencer had said that like VR, in order for like it to be successful, it has to be accessible. It has to be financially accessible to people, which is why Xbox hasn't really pulled it off yet. So I think that's the one big issue is I think it's too pricey right now to hit those mainstream numbers. So you buy a PlayStation and you're set. You buy a
Right.
PSVR 2, you still need the PlayStation. Like there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. So when you have something that's, 1,200 bucks Canadian to essentially jump into to experience VR, that's really expensive. So I don't know. I think VR is definitely going to find its moment. I don't think it's going to find it with PlayStation VR 2. I think that the tech that is there for PlayStation VR 2 is unbelievably cool with the eye tracking and everything that it does. Like all that stuff is fantastic. But cost is one of the most important factors for VR. And I don't think PlayStation's in a good place to kind of do that. And it's going to come down to software. I think if we end up getting like Half-Life Alyx on there, that's going to move some units. I think if we start getting like, if Gorilla decides to make like a Killzone VR shooter, great. That would probably move some units as well too. I think it just comes down to software, and I think that if Sony does the same thing that they've done before and rely on third-party companies to support PSVR or the Vita or whatever, and not help grow that library with their own titles, it's just going to be the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, that's the thing is they don't have this. Call the Mountain is not the killer app that they want it to be. It's not something that's going to drive people to go buy PSVR. Aside from the games you mentioned at the price, even in US, $1,100 is not cheap when you're talking about buying the PSVR with the launch game and then buying the PS5 itself. Even if you're only buying the PSVR, yes, if you go back and look at the equivalency of PSVR 1 cost pretty much the same thing when you add in all the things you needed to have for it. I didn't buy it until it was on a sale, on a Black Friday sale with Astrobot and Moss for like $250 because like you said, when I look at that and that costs more than the system itself for this thing that is probably going to wind up being a gimmick or something that I'm not going to use that often because you're not having these big games come out for it all the time. Whereas for the PS5 itself, you are. I'm not. I mean, maybe not Sony itself, but Sony itself does, still have its own first party that they're doing a lot of stuff with. But I just don't. I think also, like you just mentioned, the competition is a problem, right? You have more competition than when the PSVR 1 was out, right?
Yeah,
You
VR
have,
wasn't nearly as big. And I mean, Valve has their own headset with the Index as well too.
yeah. like it's a thing of people want what's cost effective, and are they gonna appreciate what the PSVR 2 can do if they get to see it? Sure. But if, like you said, if they have a Meta Quest 2 that costs less and they can just hook it up and it's right there and they don't have to have it tethered either, that's going to make it easier for everybody to play than, oh, hey, let's go buy this thing. Oh, but I don't have the PS5. Oh, I got to buy PS5 too. Like, that's a lot, you know. The easier you can make something when it comes out for people to get, the easier it will be for people to accept it. And I think also right now in this economy, the way it is, global economy, not just the US, asking people to pay $1,100, $1,200 is a lot. That's too much. I feel like. I know that the PS fanboys that only care about VR when it's has to do something with Sony are gonna say, "Oh, but look at all the stuff that they got in there. It's equivalent to all these PC great ones that they have." Yeah, sure, but the GQ gamer doesn't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I honestly think if it ends up selling as much as the PSVR 1, I think that's a miracle. I don't know that it was the greatest thing in the world to sell that only on PlayStation.com when it first comes out, because VR is something that needs to be experienced in order for you to understand what it
Yeah.
is. And I think you needed that to be in stores to have people put the headset on and see what
Well,
that
the
is.
GameStop
Yeah.
that's near me or whatever, like I think it was like a
Yeah.
month and a half ago and stuff, they had tons of units and they're like, yeah, we're not selling out anytime soon
Yeah.
because it's just not selling.
Yeah. I just don't think it's going to sell what they think it is. And honestly, I think VR it's doing okay, but it's not going to be this boom that people think it is right now. Anyway, I don't know if we're ever going to flip that Ready Player One switch, and maybe we are all doing that eventually. But right now, I don't
Sure.
think we're there. So,
Yeah.
um, an interesting thing that is kind of a backtrack from Sony, because it felt like we were actually getting closer to the moment of day and date, right? It felt like we were inching ever closer to we're eventually going to, it's not going to be a 1 year window, it's not going to be a 6 month window, we're going to get maybe a month or maybe even that day launch. And now Jim Ryan has come out. It seems like perhaps it might have to do with the Last of Us port being bad, maybe not, but it's weird to go from, it seems like we're pretty stuck on a year to now it's 2 to 3 years that you're going to see a PlayStation exclusive show up on PC. And then, of course, this brought out everybody having their own weird thought on it. Where do you sit on this? Does it actually hurt the console? Does it make
Um,
people not want to buy a console if your games are coming to PC that first day?
it's hard to say exactly because there's a very different cost market when you're looking at a PC that can run those games how the PC market wants them to run. So you're
Right.
dealing with like a much more expensive piece of hardware than just a console where you just plug and play. Um, I don't know if it really affects it that much because again, you're going to have people that have a high-end PC. They were never going to buy a PlayStation in the
Right.
first place, you know? So I mean, like that's kind of where I think they're pushing those sales towards because you're not going to buy a PC for the same price as the console and run it anywhere near as good. So
Right. No, the PC's
there
going
is
to
a
cost you
huge,
more. Yeah.
yeah. I mean the graphics card alone is just going to cost you what the console is. But yeah, like I don't know if it's going to be a major deciding factor in anything really. I think there is some overlap because I think there's people that you know probably bought Spider-Man on PS4 and then also bought it on PC. So there is that double dipping as well. But I don't think that overlap is massive. Like I don't think you're looking at like 60% of its sales are repeat customers. Like I don't think it's anything that drastic because there is sometimes a divide between console and PC player. Where Xbox kind of solved that with if you own it on Xbox, you kind of own it on PC to a certain extent with like through the Windows Store at least. Um, but with PC, like, yeah, I mean, I think they need to make sure their ports are good because so far a lot of their PC ports have been kind of broken at launch. Some have been good. Last of Us was horrifically bad in regards to the shape that it was in. So I mean, if it takes a little bit longer, it is what it is. Like, I'm still waiting for a second title from PlayStation to be available on PC, because so far it's just been the first titles of their respective franchises. And to me, it always felt like Sony was baiting PC customers to come to PlayStation by having that first game on there. Like, hey, here's the first one. Don't expect the second one anytime soon. So God of War Ragnarok comes out, just after the God of War one on PC, and it gets people going, oh, hey, maybe I want to buy a PlayStation to play that sequel right away, because we're probably not getting God of War Ragnarok on PC for at least another 2 years, probably. So again, I'm still waiting for that second game to drop of their respective games, whether it's Last
Right,
Passport
like now
2.
you're going to be waiting for Horizon Forbidden West to show up on PC in another 2 years or whatever after you got Zero Dawn. So, do you feel like, let's do it the other way? Do you feel like that 2 to 3 year wait makes it to where more PC players will be like, I will buy a PS5 now because I don't want to wait?
I think it depends on. I mean, financially, it would definitely, depending on the person and stuff like that. I don't think that you're going to see a major market share of PC players buying a PlayStation to do that stuff when they know that, oh yeah, if I just wait, that game is going to come to PC. I think if there is a divide where PlayStation's like, we're done with PC, then you're going to have people buying that console and stuff. But I think when they see what Microsoft has kind of done in regards to kind of carving a place in that PC space, they see the money there as well too. But they're more interested in PlayStation money than what they're getting on PC. At least that's what Jim Ryan's kind of shown anyway.
Yeah, it seems like PlayStation has no interest in, hey, play your games wherever. They want you to play them on whatever PlayStation console they have out there. And
I think the live service games that they have coming out are probably going to be PC day and date, just so that they have the people playing them. I think that's important as well too. I mean, when you take a look at like fighting games that have only ever been on one platform, like they suffocate because there's no one playing it online because there's only one platform supporting it.
Right.
So
yeah, but the PC players, sorry about that. If you were thinking that maybe we were going to get to the Xbox strategy at some point, Jim Ryan basically told you will keep waiting, or you can just buy a PS5. That's one of your two options. We'll talk about some things that are going to probably make you want to buy a PS5 a little bit later if they do get announced at the showcase. But just a couple of things that are kind of off of that for a sec. Overwatch 2, they got announced by Blizzard at BlizzCon 2019. The thing that was supposed to separate this from Overwatch 1.
The whole reason for the 2.
Yeah. The whole reason for the 2 was the fact that they were going to have this narrative-driven experience, this PvE mode, hero mode. It's going to have a story and all this stuff. This is why you want to play this game if you're not a PvP player. And then all these years, this year or so later, they've been working on this game since it launched now. And they announced that it's not happening anymore. I mean, they gave a big, long spiel about why and everything else. I mean, they're still going to be bringing you new enemies.
Well, the why was all
content.
PR speak as well.
Yeah, the why was all PR speak of like, well, we just want to let you know that it's not happening, so you don't keep, when we give you the roadmap, you don't keep thinking that it is happening.
Yeah.
I'm not an Overwatch player. My usual co-host Mark, he does like Overwatch a lot, but my hook with caring about Overwatch 2 was the PvE stuff, right? The hero mode, the single player stuff. Now you take that out, it's like, well, I'm going to go back to not caring about Overwatch. How do you feel about them removing this.
Yeah, my experience with Overwatch was 99% through the first one. Like I'd play
Yeah,
with friends and stuff like that. And I loved the characters. The character designs were unbelievably cool.
exactly.
Like it was nice. Like I barely even played, but did I spend money trying to get Mercy's Halloween costume? Hell yeah. Did I even
Yeah,
play as Mercy? No. Like I loved
the
those
cool little
characters.
trailers that they would play for them to introduce the
Yeah,
characters, like
like God, like there was more character stuff through their cutscenes and trailers or fan made stuff on various websites that were doing more with their characters than Overwatch was. And so when
right.
Overwatch is like, we're gonna have story mode and you're gonna have characters and abilities and all this kind of stuff, and we're gonna do stuff with the characters. So I was like, cool, I'm interested in Overwatch 2. Sign me up. That was the only reason I was interested in Overwatch 2 at all. Because like I don't like the multiplayer stuff. And to me, like I know people that play Overwatch and they said that like there's some some quality of life stuff that they've done that has made the game immensely better. But there's teams where like they pretty much had to cut somebody, you know, because they swapped down to 5 players or whatever the case is. And so like that changed the game as well too, because it got rid of certain roles. And I tried Overwatch 2 and I just couldn't get into it. I just couldn't care. So I'm like, well, at least I've got the single player stuff to look forward to. That's when I'll jump back in. And now we
Yeah,
have nothing.
yeah. It's
Like they said they're going to
unfortunate.
add some single player stuff into it, but if it's like, oh, here's a map with some like zombie things and you're going to shoot them and it's going to be Halloween, like no. I want actual story stuff. I want to see how these characters interact with each other. I want to see cutscenes with these characters, like, you know, like I want to see Tracer and Winston and all these other characters that are like doing things and have character arcs and all that kind of stuff. I want to see that stuff because I see it in their trailers and their character trailers and stuff. And I'm like, where's this game? Like, I want this game. And Overwatch 2 just feels like 1.5 now.
Yeah,
It does not, like, the whole reason for the 2 is just completely gone.
yeah. It's really weird that you tried to give us reasons why there needed to be a whole sequel to this game that you were making free to play also, and then you remove all of that. I mean, I guess it's better than the Microsoft way of dealing with Halo, where it's like, well, that's coming, it's coming,
Yeah.
and then later just go, oh no, it's not.
Well,
At least, yeah,
it's a huge difference of like having a team that knows how to run a live service game and then a
yeah,
team who does not know how to run a live service game. Like what I
right,
don't understand with Halo is why did they not hire a live service director who says
yeah,
this is how this stuff works?
yep,
Maybe they did. Maybe who knows? I don't know everybody that was in charge at 343, but I think Halo. I think honestly, if Halo had just shipped as a regular Halo game, I
mm-hmm.
think it would have been better. But there's a lot of missteps they made, even in regards to that stuff. But when multiplayer dropped, people were playing it, people were having fun, and they're like, okay, what's next? I'm like, oh, the next thing is like a year from now. Oh shit.
Yeah. And I mean, and
So
that's the thing is like I guess Activision Blizzard doesn't want people doing that where they go to BlizzCon and there's still nothing for that, and then they eventually like a year later have to go, oh, it's not happening.
yeah,
So I guess it's good that they did go ahead and put this out of the way, but you also kind of dampen a lot of people's cares for that game, like you just said,
yeah. Like the
and for
whole
me as
reason they
well.
reboot it
Yeah,
and made those changes was because it was all built around the fact that this was a sequel. And like if Overwatch 1 still existed and you could go play Overwatch 1 and it was just exactly how it was and stuff, like that would be a different story. But like this, I don't know of any time ever a sequel has overwritten the
yeah,
original game. So
that's
like
so weird.
I will never consider this a sequel. It's a version upgrade. And that's all it is. It's Overwatch 2.0 is what I called it when it first came out.
Yep.
And that's all it
Huh?
is. And they basically I think have lost a lot of, I mean, Activision Blizzard has lost a lot of PR kind of wins in the last little while with everything. But in regards to like promising a feature like that, like they took a game that people absolutely loved, flipped it on its side, and hoped people loved the changes. And now it feels like they didn't need to do that. They could have spent
Mhm.
all that time making new maps and just rehauling the graphics engine. Like, you know, Destiny changed things differently because they were trying to get away from the engine they were using. And then I think they ended up making stuff even more complicated where they had to like change one thing. It took like 14 hours of rendering or something like that to change one little tiny thing. So like there was a reason for the two because they did change a lot in that game, but you could still go back and play Destiny 1 at the time. I think I can't remember, but this
Yeah, you
this whole
could for a
story is
while until they
weird.
took it off. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole story with that is just it's just bizarre. It is really bizarre.
Yeah, it's absolutely just a weird decision on their part. Um, and it makes it to where now Overwatch is kind of just it's there for the people that have been, like Destiny. It's there for the people that have been playing it. For a lot of newcomers, if you weren't interested in Overwatch before, there's really not a lot for you to get into it now. So that's upsetting, and it's sad to see. And that's one of those things with those live service games that you can get a lot of promises about a roadmap, and then things happen. The game doesn't perform as well as it should. Things get knocked off, and you never get that what you wanted.
Yeah. Or you
So
get like the case of like Division 2 where they were like, "Yeah, we're done." And then people are like, "No, we want more." And they're like, "Oh, you want more. Okay." And then they started making new content for the Division 2 because people were like, "Yeah, we want more content." So I
yep,
mean, like there's some aspects of it, and then there's like live service games that have just come and gone.
yep.
Like
But
just
so
no one
many of them
cares.
just poof.
Well, like
It's
where did Rainbow Six Extraction go? Like I
oh
enjoyed
lord,
playing it, but
yeah,
it's like 3 days after that game released, no one was talking about it.
yeah. That game just suffered from existing and then all of a sudden gone. I'm like,
Just
okay.
gone.
They tried to put it on PS Plus recently, and I was like, is anybody gonna play that game? I doubt it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It was fun with what I played, but like
yeah,
the live service stuff is just so bizarre in a lot of ways because like Ubisoft has like tried their hands at so much stuff, and like Rainbow Six Siege took a while to get going, and then they tried that was it Hyperscape something or whatever. It was that one that was out for like a month, and then they just canned it.
yeah.
Um,
I
but
get yeah. Now they're doing it with the X Defiant game, which that's already gotten delayed again. So yeah, they
yeah,
have
it's
like That's a Ubisoft problem in general that they just have way too much of that live service endless game going on.
especially when you're
Um,
cutting into your own catalog as well too, because like there's some publishers that have had 2 or 3 live service games out at once, and I'm like, why? Like
yep.
like focus on one live service game, make it the best damn game that you can absolutely make, because you're not gonna get the money you're wanting from it with all the microtransactions and all that kind of stuff if you have multiple people playing multiple, or sorry, one person playing trying to play multiple games. It's just a very weird business strategy. Like I don't know if it's just like separate divisions of that company that are like, you need to generate this type of revenue and a live service game is going to do it. Because Ubisoft had Division going, they tried going one of their Ghost Recons was almost like a live service game in a kind of. And then they had that Hyperscape thing or whatever that was called, and they have X Defiant going as well, and then Rainbow
Yeah.
Six Siege, and like
I mean, Siege was actually a win for them because that was
it
dying
wasn't
and they
always
made it.
it
Yeah.
it did not do well at the start.
Well, right. What
They've
I'm
turned that
saying is
around.
like that's the problem is Siege made it to where they feel like they could do that with every single one of these, where we could turn it around and it's going to be great. And same thing with like Ghost Recon Breakpoint, right? That thing is somehow still existing, even though it really just bombed for the most part. For Honor as well, that thing still exists. I don't know who's playing that, but they still make content for it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
Ubisoft is
it's
weird like that.
everybody's tried, and even like something like, because I mean Babylon's Fall, like that
Oh Lord, yeah,
released and then uninstalled itself. Like
Yeah.
Anthem, did what it did, and like I liked Anthem. Like I
Yeah.
really liked it. I wanted more, especially with that cliffhanger.
Avengers,
Yeah,
just
Avengers was to me. See, I liked Anthem right from the start. Avengers, I didn't care for really at all, just because I never had that power fantasy. It never felt
right.
strong. It's like it's so weird. It reminded me of like Ultimate Alliance 3, where I'm playing as like the Hulk and I'm in the prison level and inmates are beating the crap out of me. They're beating the crap out of the Hulk.
Yeah, this feels
What?
absolutely.
Like the power fantasy stuff was just so weird in some of that stuff. And I get it, you have to make some things challenging, but then I was like, oh, we're fighting robots over and over and over again. And it just got
Yep.
boring. Like it just was not great. Like I loved the best Marvel online game they've ever made was Marvel, what is it, Omega? Or Marvel Heroes Omega or
Yeah,
whatever.
Marvel Heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, that game was fantastic. Like I loved it. Playing as like Angela, who's like that was the first Marvel game that she'd ever been in. Like that game was unbelievable cool. It was like Ultimate Alliance, the MMO. And then they lost the rights and they had to shut it down.
Yep. It's sad how some of these things have worked, but you know, you would think that would make it to where there's less of this stuff going on and more of the let's do things that are going to have people around. And unfortunately, Overwatch did not do that here. But at some point, well, you think they will be. Activision Blizzard, things are pointing somewhat in the right direction for them to eventually be part of Xbox. And now Xbox has been under fire recently because of the Redfall bad news, the Phil Spencer interview, all of that. And so a lot of pressure has been put on Starfield to deliver now. It now has to be the biggest, grandest, most amazing game on planet Earth. However, there are many Xbox folks and Xbox outlets, including one from Xbox era, Nick Paquette, who went on a podcast saying that he's convinced that no gaming outlets want to give Starfield high scores. There's already sites that have decided pre-release that Starfield is a 7.0 to 8.5, and we're going to keep bringing the Xbox brand down. So, I'm not going to say the gaming media, everybody has their bias, right? It's not that there isn't one. It's that gaming media is supposed to try to be neutral in that respect.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Where was that type of criticism when Hi-Fi Rush was getting like 9s and 10s, and then like any of the Forza games? Because like Forza, what was the last one? I always forget the numbers. The last one was 5.
Forza Horizon 5, yeah.
Yeah,
and
like
technically this one's 8, but they don't have the number.
Yeah, because like the last two Forza Horizons to me were some of the best console exclusives. Like those were 9s and 10s, pretty much across the board. They were just fantastic. So like, yeah, like if sites are going to be doing that, then they're definitely going to have a lot of kind of credibility lost, because like they're taking a look at like what other sites are doing, like with that one site that gave Tears of the Kingdom like a 6, and then they got like a whole lot of clicks and stuff. And then there's that site that like gave Hogwarts Legacy like a 1 or something.
Yeah.
But like, and then like they just get like clicks and stuff. And that is like the biggest issue, I think, with like a lot of major outlets is like they're paid to get traffic. And if they're going to compromise that kind of stuff by producing false reviews, that sucks. Like absolutely sucks, because then like you don't know whether or not that site's even worth checking out.
But I mean, do you think they're actually going to do that though? I don't think that there's a preconceived, okay, Starfield falls in this range. No matter how great it is, it cannot get more than 8.5. That doesn't.
No, yeah. I don't think there's going to be anything like that. I mean, again, like reviewing a game in a way where you're only doing it to get clicks and stuff, I can see that for news articles, like clickbait and all that kind of stuff. But when you are essentially putting your credibility on the line in regards to reviewing the product, then it can kind of tarnish your reputation with like the publishers. I mean, look at all the websites that are in like Nintendo jail, like Kotaku, where they're like digging their grave even more by like saying like, oh, like this game is available to like on piracy, like, you know, with Metroid, when Metroid Dread came out, they were talking about that stuff. So I think like that stuff is more realistic, where I can see sites doing that for like clicks, but already having a review for a game they haven't even touched in a preview capacity, I don't know. Like Redfall,
Yeah.
like I know every site was like, this doesn't seem that great during like when they went and saw their previews and stuff, like listening to like Giant Bomb and GameSpot and stuff, where they were talking about their impressions of playing that game. They were like, okay, well maybe the actual game has more.
Right.
It didn't. So like they could already have a preconceived notion of like, okay, this is going to be this type of game. But with Starfield, I mean, this is Bethesda. Like this is like their flagship team. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that they already know that game has to be great. Like I don't think that Todd Howard isn't putting pressure on himself already to know that.
Yeah.
Look, the last Fallout had some issues, whatever. Like I need to Fallout 76. Like he for his own sake, not just Xbox, not just Bethesda. Like he needs to get his reputation back. Of okay, we're back to the Skyrim days. We're back to those days.
Well,
Of
this
you
this
can
is
count
also a
on us.
main series game too, because like
Yeah.
Fallout was like an experimental side project, pretty much.
Right.
So I mean, a lot of the bad press of that game came around people expecting that this was the next Fallout. You know, so like it wasn't treated like a side game or something like that.
Right.
Or at least in people's eyes, they didn't see it that. And I think that if they would have marketed Fallout alongside news of a proper Fallout coming down the pipe, I think that would have been better. Saying like, hey, like, you know, we have a proper Fallout game, you know, that we're designing and stuff like that. But here's like a side thing for multiplayer, that kind of stuff. But they really went in marketing that thing like it was like the next Fallout. So that was a big thing for them. Whereas Starfield is a next big project for them. Like the next thing that they go and work on is Elder Scrolls. But yeah, I think with Starfield, like I'm not in the camp where everyone's like, oh, Starfield gets like 6s and 7s and Xbox is dead. No, Xbox is going to be absolutely fine. Like it is important for Starfield to be great. For sure. I mean, like Skyrim is one of the most celebrated games out there, but it's also one of the most released games out there as well too. But I don't know, like I I think a lot of people are reading a little too much into how important Starfield has to be. I think it does have to be great. I think that does have to be in order to do that kind of stuff. But I think most people are going to focus on the negative aspects of any Microsoft release more so than the game themselves. Like it's probably without a doubt going to be 30 FPS on Xbox Series X for sure. I don't really have a problem with that because like I played Redfall and like the 30 FPS was not the issue. Like that game could have been 120 FPS on Series X, and I'd still feel exactly the same about it. So, like playing Starfield in 30 FPS, I've been playing games in 30 FPS for the longest time. Does it suck? Of course. Would I love it to be 60 FPS? Of course. But I'm going to have, if I have any issues with that game, it's not going to be the frame rate. I mean, if it's an inconsistent frame rate, if it's dropping the 10 to 15, 20 frames constantly and all that kind of stuff, sure. But if it's a locked 30, it's fine for me. But I think a lot of people are just kind of, I don't know. I think they're focusing on the wrong stuff when it comes to a lot of these types of things in regards to like how they're gauging how important it is, whether or not it's going to be like defining the story for Xbox going forward and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's that dire, you know, like, but I mean, again, I want good games on Xbox. You know, I definitely want them to come out that way. And I think we're going to start getting that stuff. But I mean, COVID was tough for a lot of teams, and like a lot of teams pretty much had to start from scratch. So a lot of games got delayed to swap to different engines because like Hellblade 2 is going to be Unreal Engine 5. And that game is going to be absolutely fantastic. I have no doubt because that team at Ninja Theory is phenomenal. So, I mean, you got that game coming out. You got the next Forza Motorsport, which is going to do fantastic for gearheads because, like, it's not my kind of racing game. Like, I'll play it because it's on Game Pass and stuff, but Horizon's always been my thing. Fable's going to be big for them as well, too. Avowed. Like, there's lots of stuff that they can really show off. But see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the camp that Starfield does need to be great. I don't think the end of the world is happening if it's not. Like a 10 out of 10 genre defining, generation defining game. It can be a 9 and be great, and you can still have fun in it, and people can play it for a long time, like you do with Fallouts and Skyrims, you know, all that. Yeah. I just think that people are. It's always the extremes, right? You've got to be like, oh, this game's gonna suck. It's gonna keep. The only thing that Xbox can do is racing games now. Like, no, I mean, they do other games. You just don't. You either don't like those games or they aren't AAA enough for you.
Well, people are looking at Redfall and they're like, "This is the worst game ever." I'm like, "Dude, you have not played enough games.
Yeah,
if you think Redfall is the worst game
there
ever."
are worse games.
Play Bravo Team on PSVR.
Yeah. I'm not even. I mean, there's other games I've reviewed from not the PS4 days that were really bad. Like, so it's just it's always the overhypeness of it. Was Redfall bad? Yes. But did it have issues? Yes. I played it. There was some fun to be had, but it wasn't great. You know. But you know, it's a bad blip for a studio that usually does really good things. It happens. You know.
Well, the one thing with Redfall is like Redfall was kind of left unchecked by Microsoft. Like it was something that was so far in that they hadn't done anything. Whereas with Starfield, Microsoft's been working with that team a lot more.
Exactly.
So I think the optimization is going to be a lot better because like Redfall not launching with the 60 FPS option, not a great look. I'd rather them would have just delayed it. Because if they were already looking at like internal reviews and internal reviews were not terribly great, like if they're like, this is going to be a 71 on Metacritic, delay it. Yeah. Don't put it out till it's an 8 minimum. So I think Starfield, like, honestly, I think it's going to hit somewhere between probably like an 88 on Metacritic to probably a 91 at the highest.
Right.
Like, I think it's going to hit a lot of 9s. I don't think it's going to hit that many 10s, but I think it's going to hit 9s. I think it's going to be a great title for them. But yeah, like the importance of it is pretty significant. But yeah, it's not the doom and gloom that everyone's like, oh, if Starfield fails, then Xbox is done. They're selling off their business. Like, no, that's not happening.
I mean, what you want is to have that title that gets people to want to play and subscribe to Game Pass. If Starfield can do that and gets you to want to keep playing in it and keep subscribing for further months, that's the important part of it. Whether it gets a 9 or a 10 or whatever, it's not going to really matter at the end of the day. So just to hit some of this stuff quick, so we can get into our showcase predictions here. Once again, you had some talk. We've already had rumors of there being a PS5 Pro and that thing's coming next year or at some point or whatever. More talk about that. Really, where do you stand on the whole? I guess mid-gen console refreshes are kind of a thing that's going to happen now, but like, should we be really talking about that right now? Because it feels like we're just now hitting the stride for PS5 and the Xbox Series.
Yeah, like the main reason that we had the PS4 Pro and the Xbox like mid-cycle upgrades was because console sales were stalling. Like they kind of hit a stride essentially of like how many units that they were actually selling. And right now, like consoles are selling extremely good, extremely fast. People are still in a market to try and find PS5s and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think there's a need for it. I think probably you'll see them if there are going to be console mid-cycle refreshes. I think it's going to be at least another 2 years because most of the teams haven't even had a chance to play around with this hardware. Because like God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West, like those are PS4 games that run on PS5 with a little bit extra bells and whistles. Whereas the first, I think,
Yeah.
At least so soon, because like I don't know, it doesn't really feel like these consoles have really been out that long, even though they kind of have. But I don't know, like I would love to see brand new hardware for sure, but I don't think the time has kind of warranted it yet. Even for releasing this year or next, I just don't see it, because like it was a completely different market back when the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X came out. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean you're right about that. It feels like Sony just announced at the beginning of this year that there's no longer a chain holding back PS5s being in stores. Like you're going to be able to walk in and get one if you want it. Xbox has had a little bit less problem with that because they've had the Series S, but I don't think that they really need to have that right now. Like let's get some actual PS5 only titles out there, and you hit the stride of the PS5 and the Xbox Series, and then when you've had a couple of years of that, maybe 2025, if you want to release a mid-gen upgrade, sure. Yeah, I know people are complaining about the whole, oh man, you guys promised us 60 this gen, and there's a lot of games not hitting that. Well, I mean, they've come into limitations for other things. They want to make these games bigger and better and everything.
It's optimization issues as
Yeah.
well too, and so many games have been getting released unfinished.
Right.
So that's the big problem, because everyone's like, we need a release date, and they'll like hound people and like, okay, fine, it's coming out in September, and then they have to delay it. They're like, oh my god, I'm going to send you death threats now. Like it's so stupid. Like talking to the public is very different, because like release dates are generally not for the public; they're usually for investors. Public facing stuff is just when they know when they're going to essentially turn a profit. I mean, like if you take a look at like the stuff with Grand Theft Auto 6, like they announced that Take-Two is expecting to make a certain amount of money within a certain time period coming up here. Like, wow, I wonder how they're going to make that money. Oh, GTA 6. Like,
yeah.
Like, so there's that end of it. But yeah, it's been kind of tough for, I think, teams to produce stuff, because like we're just kind of getting out of like a lot of what COVID was doing with development and stuff, because like there's some teams that lost 6 months to a year on that, and then remote has been both a blessing and a curse for some studios. Some studios are like, yeah, no, you have to come into the office now, when they've hired people like across the country or whatever the case is. So it's been tough for a lot of teams, but I honestly think that more teams should be confident in delaying the stuff if it means they're going to get a better game. Because like I think Jedi Survivor could have used like another month or so of polish, because it's now in a good playable state, because when it first came out it didn't run that well, especially on PC. Same issue with Redfall, where it wasn't identifying like the cores essentially properly.
Right.
So there's a lot of games that are just getting released way too soon, and I think we need to see some good finished next-gen games coming out that are not mired in the controversy of being unfinished before we can really even start talking about additional consoles, because otherwise it just feels like a Band-Aid on a problem. So.
Exactly. Let's have Final Fantasy 16 and Spider-Man 2 and all that out and see how it goes before we start saying, oh, well, we need to have that PS5 Pro out right now. So moving on to some things that don't have to do with those consoles for a bit. Video game music has continuously always been a huge thing for gaming, but it seems like in the last years or so now, video game music has its own Grammys, and we have franchises like Final Fantasy and Legend of Zelda and Kingdom Hearts, stuff like that have had orchestra concerts, and they have tours and everything. And if you remember last year, SEGA had like a free orchestra concert they did for the 30th anniversary of Sonic, and now they're gonna take it on the road. They're gonna do shows in London and Los Angeles in September, and then I guess they would make it a tour if it's successful. I mean, are you a big fan of the Sonic games, and how big is music in games for you?
I mean, Sonic's always been a franchise that I've really adored, but I wouldn't consider myself a massive fan of it. Like I always feel like that's a franchise that has made a lot of missteps with. I think there's more
Right.
worse Sonic games than there are good Sonic games. The music's always been good though. That stuff that has always been great. I think Sega has had a lot of properties that have really made some absolutely fantastic music, or just soundtracks in general. Um, but yeah, like I don't know, like I think these concerts and stuff are kind of neat, and I think that they've got enough successful IPs that kind of stuff can be good. And it is nice that video game music has been getting a lot more mainstream. I think it's like a Grammy category now.
Right.
I don't watch the Grammys, but I think that there was something. I think it was like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or something.
Yes, they did. The nominees for that were kind of weird, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that like it all depends on how they're doing it. Like I don't know if they just typed like top 5 gaming soundtracks 2021 or something, and then like was like, oh, okay, there's this guy. Let's do this, because like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, when it's like I'm sitting here, I'm like, that even come out that year to do that? Oh, yeah, no, I know, maybe. Like I don't know. It's just felt sort of weird, and like when I think back on Valhalla, I'm like, I don't remember that soundtrack at all.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a weird thing, but I mean, like Sega's got a lot of stuff with really good music and stuff. You know, like Space Channel 5 always had good music. Jet Set Radio Future and Jet Grind Radio, like all that stuff had fantastic music. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think this can work extremely well. Sonic is one of those franchises that when you think about their music, it's one of the most remembered. And it's cool to see something that's not like an RPG getting a concert series. And I'd love to see more of this kind of thing of like, let video game music be its thing, have series, I mean, it'd be cool if we had, like you're saying, just have Sega have its own, the Sega Orchestra thing, and it's not just Sonic, it's other Sega IPs as well. Nintendo, who is really bad about releasing their soundtracks to the public. It'd be cool if they ever got into that.
Yeah, because there's
Too.
a lot of composers that even run their kind of stuff. Like I know,
Yeah.
like Austin Wintory, from like a lot of people know him from like Journey and the Pathless and a bunch of other games and stuff. Like he's always been very good at relaying his music out to those types of venues, and even contributing to that stuff, going like, oh, hey, here's all this. So like, I think when you have the right people on board, you can kind of produce some really, really epic shit. So
yeah. Oh, for sure. That will be a thing we'll keep our eyes on, as will be Sega talking about they want to make more movies with their IPs.
what?
Obviously,
It's almost like the Mario movie did something.
right, and also the Sonic movies as well.
Sonic
They're on the
movies, yeah.
third one. So we do know that there's a Space Channel 5 movie in development. There's the Knuckles TV show on Paramount that's there. There's the Yakuza movie in development. They already had one previously in Japan, and Comic Zone I think is in the works. But like, if you look at other Sega properties, is there one that stands out to you that like, oh man, I think I'd want to see a movie based on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Comic Zone, like I want them to kind of embrace the era that they're kind of pulling from. So like that is like, because movie trailers always used to start in a world like that. I want that
Yeah.
for Comic Zone. That would be perfect for that trailer, because that always seems like that kind of era. Like Comic Zone almost feels like the evolution of like the original Mario Brothers movie in regards to how corny I kind of want it to be. I don't know, in certain terms like Sega IP, like I think honestly we need another good fighting series, because like the Tekken movies haven't been that great. The Mortal Kombat movies have been somewhat all right. The first one, I mean, obviously is a classic in that regards, but I think honestly you could get something really cool with Virtual Fighter. Like you could you could really like embrace like the virtual part where maybe it's fighters that are fighting in a VR type of thing. So like you can have all the neat types of stages and all that kind of stuff and characters getting beaten up and not killed because it's all virtual. Like I think there's some
Right.
neat ideas that you could kind of mine there, but like Sega has some decent properties. But yeah, Virtua Fighter would be pretty cool. Like maybe they could one up Gran Turismo movie and do a Sega GT,
Yeah.
you know. But
To
yeah,
bring that back again, because we haven't had a game for Sega GT in a long time.
I know.
It'd be cool if they did.
What is it? Sambia Amigo or whatever? Isn't that Sega?
Yeah, Salmon Amigo. Yeah, that's Sega.
Yeah, they could do that. Bring that as like a children's show and do it live action though. Make it look like the creators were on something when they did that, because that's half those kids shows where they're like they've got to be on something. But there's some cool stuff that they could kind of do there. But Comic Zone I think would be neat. But yeah, like I don't know, like the Knuckles stuff is like the Knuckles TV show I think is cool, but I think that was one of the perks of hiring Idris Elba as part of like some type of multi-part deal. Plus you need content for their streaming service. So I mean like, you know, we'll probably get like a what is it, Big the Cat or something on Sonic? Right. I can't remember. He'll probably get his own.
Yes, Big the Cat will show up in there.
But I don't know, like I don't remember too many Sega things. Like I know like when they did the Dreamcast, they had a lot of cool stuff. Like you could do like like Shenmue's not Sega is Sen.
Yeah, Shenmue's Sega. Yeah.
Yeah, you could do a Shenmue show where it just has like an uncomfortable like 5-minute scene of him just like picking up something, going, "What is this?" And then like him just, you know, there's some cool stuff that they could do, but I don't know. Like, I think that quality is your first standard. So I mean, like, don't just produce content so that Paramount Plus has something to put in their commercial. Like, I think you have to make a good quality product or no one's going to care. Like,
right.
The Mario movie probably had 15 different renditions before Nintendo was like, yeah, we'll settle on that. I mean, hell, the composer had to fight to use Mario music in the damn movie. So there's right and wrong choices that kind of dictate the quality of these things. And I mean, like, I don't know how a Space Channel 5 movie could be any good, but if the quality is there and there's a reason for it, then maybe. I mean, hell, they made a movie about how they made Tetris, and that apparently is good. So quality is always going to kind of trump everything essentially over the idea. So like Sega's got a lot of cool properties. There's a lot of cool things that they could do, but the quality has to be there. Otherwise none of it matters.
Yeah. I mean, they now own Angry Birds as well. So they could definitely do another one of those Angry Birds movies. I think for me, and they've already done House of the Dead before as well. Just to point that out.
But you need to put a good director on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Huey Boll or whatever his name is. Like, oh.
I mean, I would be. Super Monkey Ball could easily be a cool animated movie. Shinobi, they could make that happen as well if you needed a ninja flick. Streets of Rage could be a cool movie as well if they wanted to do that.
Yeah, Streets of Rage could be pretty cool. Like if they, because I mean, like, I don't know, like they did the was it the Double Dragon movie like a billion years ago and whatnot. So I mean, like, it's not uncommon for them to do the two guys against the bad guy type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll see if they do announce any more movies in the future. But for now, you know that Sonic 3 movie is coming at the end of the year, so there's that. Or well, at the end of next year, I think it is. I'm not sure, but. Well, we did mention fighting games before. Mortal Kombat 1, which I kind of went over like what was going to be in that last week. They did reveal the DLC fighters thanks to a leak. Everything getting leaked. Thanks, Amazon. Amazon Italy revealing that Quan Chi, Omni-Man, Ermac, Takeda, and the aforementioned Peacemaker and Homelander are going to be, in fact, that first wave of DLC. What do you, are you a big MK fan, and what do you think about this?
Like I'm super excited for Mortal Kombat 1 because like the story mode stuff has been fantastic. Like they've been pretty much unparalleled when it comes to that, and those story modes are the best Mortal Kombat movies you'll find. So this one going back to basics with like the whole rebooted canon, just with how Mortal Kombat 11's DLC ended. Quan Chi being DLC is interesting, mainly because most of the Mortal Kombat DLC has kind of been guest characters mostly,
Right.
Especially with like the cameo fighters, because like they still haven't really explained how that works. But Omni Man, I'm not 100% too sure if I know who that is. That one's kind of on the edge of my brain right now. I mean, I know who Ermac and Takeda, I think I know on that one. Peacemaker, I'm wondering if that's an Amazon deal or if that is a version of the Peacemaker from the comics, which are Vertigo, which is DC, which is Warner. So
That's probably that. Yeah.
But I mean, again, too, do you make a Peacemaker that doesn't look anything like the one on Amazon, and people are like, "That's not that's not Homelander." I mean, if you make Homelander the DC Vertigo one based off the comics, it's a kind of a different character. So I don't know if how they're going to tackle Homelander, whether or not they've made a deal with Amazon because of the voice. But
yeah, I would think that it has to kind of be the Homelander from
the show,
the show, because that's the one a lot of people know. But they could just do the comic one and be like, "Wait, well, there's Homelander." But I feel like it's the same thing with Peacemaker. Like, more people know Peacemaker now. I know he was in the movies as well, but it's like from the show that was on HBO.
Yeah,
Max,
it'd be interesting if they actually get John Cena. I mean, I'm assuming he's not like terribly expensive because I mean they've got Arnold Schwarzenegger before and Sylvester Stallone and Peter Weller. Like they've got all those people to kind of do that stuff. So
I'd imagine he'd probably want to do it. I mean, he was in the WWE games for years, so why not?
I think honestly, like that stuff's kind of neat. But I don't know. I kind of wish that the DLC characters were like more of that guest type of stuff. So like Quan Chi is sort of weird. But I mean, that's probably just phase one. So I mean, we're gonna have probably 3 or 4 phases or something, given how the other ones have gone, and whether or not we'll do a expansion that'll bring more characters.
Yeah, I'm sure they will probably do something because they always tend to do like more DLC and then the expansion as well. So, but cool that they've already, I guess, unintentionally released this.
Well, it's a new
DLC
Warner that's very money focused, so they're definitely going to be doing something, especially if they're selling cameo fighters.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's just when Hogwarts is out there making a bunch of money, they're gonna try everything they can to make sure the MK games do this as well. One more thing here before we get into that PlayStation showcase stuff. We always got to hand that out to the voice actors or actors in general that maybe unintentionally spoil things. The Alan Wake voice actor Matthew Peretta was on Monsters Madness and Magic podcast, and he was talking about Alan Wake 2. He talked about doing it, and that he kind of, in a way, gave us a release window for it, saying, "Oh, I think it's gonna release around Halloween, a fitting month for a spooky game." He talks about it basically coming out in October. That he went out to Finland to the Remedy people and calls them amazing people, which they are. I mean, pretty fitting that game comes out in October, right?
Oh, for sure. Like, I don't like. This is like, I mean, you had Tony Todd spoil Spider-Man 2's release date essentially because he's playing Venom. Exactly. Yeah, so it's almost like these guys like don't understand what their contracts are, where they're like, "Yeah, don't talk about this." And I mean, like, yeah, it's interesting. Like again, too, like I don't think it really shakes up anything too much because they already said that it was going to hit in 2023. But again, games get delayed all the time. But I mean, I think it honestly, having that like October, November, whatever release date is going to be pretty good for them because spooky games and Twitch run hand in hand around that month. So I mean, that is your prime time to get people out there playing it and being spooked around the proper season.
You like the Alan Wake games in general, or?
Yeah, I didn't mind the first Alan Wake one. I'm not crazy on it. Like I think it's a very good to great game, but I did enjoy my time with it. I haven't played the remaster, or is that what's? I don't even know
Yeah,
if that one's out.
the remaster. Yeah.
Yeah, like I played it back when it originally came out. I didn't play that DLC pack that apparently was really, really good.
Yes.
But I've been kind of iffy on Remedy in some ways because like Quantum Break, like I liked, I didn't absolutely love it, and I was the same way with like Control. I thought it was pretty good, but I mean, like I went through the entire game not having access to my map because it
Oof.
it just did not work. It was just black splots all over the place, so I had to play that entire game without a map. Um, so like, but I mean, what I played of is pretty good. So like, I'm looking forward to Alan Wake 2. I don't know whether or not it's something that I'm going to actually purchase, just because limited funds.
Right.
But that should be good.
Yeah, I'm the same way on the limited funds thing, but I was a big fan of the first Alan Wake. I love that DLC. Reviewed the DLC, and I didn't play the remaster, but from loving that first game, I'm excited for the second game. But yeah, I'm down with it coming out in October. Kind of remove the you know kind of remove a little bit from it is still coming that deluge of games that comes out in the fall,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit off that right now. So as somebody asked on Twitch, what was our favorite game that we were playing right now? We talked about that, I think earlier. But yeah, let's get into this showcase stuff here because that's happening pretty quickly here on Wednesday. Jim Ryan says he wants to make a statement with this. He wants to let people
Like a
know.
bank statement, like he normally is doing.
Yeah. They did say it's going to run over a little bit over an hour. There is going to be new IPs in here. It's not going to just be known stuff. There's obviously going to be stuff from third parties and indies, and they did mention there's going to be PSVR 2 stuff. As much as both of us may not necessarily care too much about it, I'm sure there's going to be something about one of the live service games as well. So, what are some of the things that you think for sure we're going to get in this showcase?
Well, I would love to see Twisted Metal just because they got that TV show coming out. So I think pairing that along something that someone can actually purchase is a major focus for PlayStation right now because they've seen what it's kind of done with Last of Us and whatnot. So Twisted Metal, I think they've been working on that for quite a while. We'll see how that goes because it's a completely new studio that has had no history with Twisted Metal as far as I know. I would love to see something for Wolverine other than Logan's back.
Yeah.
So that would be cool. Like, honestly, just if you have to, give me a tone piece. Like, that's all I kind of need right now because, like, I know that they're still working on that because, I mean, it's the same. It's like a splinter group of Insomniac working on it. So even if it is just a gameplay tone piece that's like a CG trailer, I just kind of want to know where you're kind of hitting with Wolverine. And if the Metal Gear rumors are true, I mean, Sony reaching out to Konami and whatnot, I can totally see because that's a major brand from a Japanese studio. So like that could be kind of cool. So I think that's there. But I think my biggest hope though is like kind of a return to like a PS1 series, like whether or not that is like Siphon Filter coming back or in PS2 with like SOCOM and whatnot, or even like what's Bluepoint working on? Like I know Bluepoint had made a comment about Legend of Dragoon like years ago.
Right.
Is that what they were working on, or was their Halloween joke last year actually a thing with Castlevania? I'm not sure, but there's a lot of cool stuff. But I think we'll definitely see what Bluepoint is working on.
Yeah, I definitely think we are, especially if it's a known franchise, because they're gonna want to show that, right? It's going to be exclusive. They're going to be able to talk about that. If it is Metal Gear, I mean, the waves it will make are impressive. Another game that Microsoft is not getting on Xbox, blah blah blah. But I mean, even then, it's cool that Metal Gear would be back, even though unfortunately, Kojima's not involved. The fact that you're getting those games on modern consoles would be cool. definitely we're gonna get something for Spider-Man 2. We already know that pretty much. It's their one big game that's coming out this year.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will do something with the demo for Final Fantasy 16. If they don't necessarily wait on that for Summer Games Fest when it's closer. Like just announcing when the demo is going to be. I really don't need a big trailer for that. We already had like
They have
2
showed
different
so
games.
much.
Yeah, please
But
don't.
that's part of their contract with Square Enix right now is to promote
Yeah.
the crap out of their games because they're getting them exclusive. So like I'm not surprised that that's kind of
I
how
just
they've
don't
done
want
it.
it to take up like 10 minutes of the thing.
No, I mean we'll probably
Yeah.
get like Gran Turismo 7 movie DLC, so you can like
Yeah.
you know who knows they'll probably put a trailer for the Gran Turismo movie in that showcase and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like there's some decent stuff. Like I don't know, they'll probably show factions and actually see what that's like.
Yeah,
But
I would think so.
I'm just not a fan of the brand really, so we'll see how that goes. But I don't know. I mean, they'll probably try and get some last ditch stuff and probably show it the trailer for that Burning Shores DLC for Horizon, just as one last little hurrah of doing that kind of stuff. And I think honestly, if we get a Rockstar logo, it's just probably going to be more Grand Theft Auto 5 stuff for PS5.
You don't think that they would have something like Grand Theft Auto 6?
I don't know. I don't know who has the marketing on it and stuff like that of whether or not because I mean Strauss Zelnick, I know he's been very like vocal in terms of like comments on about how he says that he hopes the Microsoft deal goes through. So maybe that's Microsoft has, pay them a lot of money for a Grand Theft Auto reveal. But I mean, again, it's going to sell more on PS5 just because that's kind of where that brand is kind of represented as being the dominant force. Like it's probably my least, it's not my least used console, but I don't play as much as my other ones. But I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get a Grand Theft Auto there. Maybe like a teaser type of thing. Because I mean, they've already shown they've already had the leak. Right. So I think going in a sight unseen is not as easy right now. So I think they have less to lose if they command how it's been shown. Because there's a lot of games and stuff where they were even going to release it or announce it or anything, and then it leaks, and then it kind of forces their hand where they have to kind of act outside of those leaks. So getting ahead of everything. So hard to say.
I'll be very surprised if Astrobot 2 is not for the PSVR 2 is not one of the PSVR 2 things shown, just because that game was a huge mover for them as far as getting people to adopt PSVR, or they put it in with the PSVR. So when they did those bundles, so I could definitely see them showing that.
I do kind of hope that if they do the Astrobot sequel, that it's also non-VR as well.
I agree with you there too.
The one that came with PS5 was fantastic. Like it had no right being that good.
But it's still one of my favorite games that's come out on the PS5. It was it's such a delight. It's such a surprise that's what it was, and it's like, man, could we just have a full blown one of these that's not tied to VR?
Yeah,
it'd be awesome.
No, there's a lot of cool stuff that they can do for the show. Like, I don't think we'll see a single first party VR title.
You don't think so?
I think it'll all be third party because that's been kind of Sony's MO. And I don't think that they've got anything planned really for VR. Like, I don't know. Like, I want to see Sony do something first party with VR. I just don't know if we're going to see it yet.
Yeah, I don't think they are either, because a lot of their first party are probably already working on something that was big for PS5 in the first place. What's Ben's working on? Like, are they going to show that? You mentioned factions. I feel like Sucker Punch is probably working on Ghost of Tsushima 2, and they already kind of mentioned that that's not going to be there. I'd imagine we also going to get something for Stellar Blade as well, because they've shown that almost like every time they do some kind of
That's a weird one because
Yeah.
like when it was originally announced, it was multi-platform.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
apparently it's because they got one of their studios working on them with it. So that's
Mm.
why they were able to make it exclusive. So yeah, there's a lot of things they could announce. I'm hoping that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth gets something. That would be the thing that would make me absolutely love this showcase if we got a trailer for that. Or they confirm that maybe it's coming out in December. I don't know. But
Yeah.
that's definitely wishful thinking. I would probably think it's going to come out more January, February. But hey, they had a Crisis Core come out in December, so who knows? Uh, but yeah, that's the one thing I'm hoping for. But I think we're gonna get a little mix of everything because that's how these showcases work. I would put it around like what they've been averaging. I think it was 21 to anywhere from like 19 to 21 games shown at both the showcases, and they skipped last year. So if we get around 20 games or 22 games, I think that's good, and it'll give you definitely enough between what's coming this year and what's coming later to get excited about. I think with the PS5, I just hope that everything that we see PS5 only, and it's not a lot of VR because I mean I think to be fair, most people are not gonna want a ton of that, but we'll see.
So you comment here. I just got to take a quick break. Just
Oh,
one
I
second.
was gonna go ahead and close, but go
Oh
ahead,
yeah,
man.
if you want to do, if I can wait around for that.
Yeah. So just really quick, like as we always end the show, what's coming out this week? Game Pass is getting some stuff. I've been waiting for Planet of Lana for a while since they
Mhm.
announced it uh at Summer Games Fest, I think it was, or the Game Awards, can't remember. So that game's coming pretty soon. I'm excited for that. Also Cassette Beast, that's out on PC already, but I've been waiting
Yeah, I
for it to come
reviewed
to
it.
consoles.
Absolutely
Oh,
fantastic.
absolutely
Yeah, if
awesome.
you're looking for like the original Pokemon games, but they've like the gameplay has been like the evolution that you've wanted from the Pokemon games. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's so
Oh,
fantastic.
awesome. I can't wait
It's
now.
such a good game.
If you are still got Forspoken there somewhere, you can finally play the Intanta We Trust DLC this week. That Lord of the Rings Gollum game is coming out. I don't think that's going to be good, but
Yeah.
who
Hopefully,
knows?
getting a code, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Miasma Chronicles looks interesting too because it looks like more of that XCOM that you like as well, with some RPG stuff in there.
Nice.
And yeah, and I was actually looking forward to Evil Wizard, and that's like the one thing that's not coming to Game Pass. So we'll see. I might ask for a code for that one. And yeah, man, thank you so much, Jeff, for being on.
Hey, no problem.
Don't
Glad
know
to
if
be
you
here.
want to promote yourself really
Sure.
quick. Or...
Yeah, so I run analogstickgaming.com. I mostly do console stuff, but I've been doing some PC stuff, especially with some of the codes that I've been getting, things that I've been able to run on Steam Deck. So the last thing I put out was a review for Showgunners. The next review that I'm putting out right now is embargoed. I'm not going to say what it is, but it is something that's on that list. And look forward to that. After that, I'm going to be probably putting a review out for Bat Boy, depending how short it is. I'm hopefully looking to get a review out for Zelda. And also, we are myself and Jordan Andau, who's also a contributor on Outer Haven. He does some volunteer or some writing there as well too. We're actually going to be putting out a sort of a successor to the previous podcast that we were running, which was the G4A channel podcast. So we're going to be having that come out, and that's the Gaming Mix. That's going to be kind of our show and whatnot, and trying to get some guests on there as well too. So like we would love to have you on as well. That
awesome.
we're kind of in the planning right now of creating like the templates, the overall focus of the show, kind of getting there. We've got an absolutely kick-ass opener that we had done that is later. It's basically like an MCU opener, but it's all video games.
Oh, that's
It is
cool.
unbelievably cool. I found a nice piece of like royalty-free music to use on that. That is fantastic. It's just in the final stages of getting that prepped. And then we're going to have that going out, and it's going to be something that we're probably going to do weekly, and that kind of stuff too. And we're basically going to be just kind of talking about news and games and what we've been playing and a bunch of stuff. So you can go on to YouTube and find the gaming mix on there. There's a few other little things on YouTube that kind of say gaming mix, but they're all like old, outdated things that have not been used. Some of them are music focused, but ours is like the gaming mix because it's kind of a mix of all things gaming. So whether it's like TV shows or movies, comic books, cartoons, the video games themselves, novelizations, things like that, everything that is a mix of everything that is part of this industry. So that's going to be fun to do. Just because like I love being on podcasts. I love talking video games with people and stuff like that and sharing those kinds of experiences, talking news, talking upcoming stuff. So wherever I can do that, the better.
Yeah, well, it was great to have you on. I'm hoping to have Jordan on one of these times. Obviously, the time difference because he's UK, so I'll have to work that out with him. And yeah, he does great stuff over there at Haven as well. He likes to write about accessibility as well, which is cool because we don't have enough of people writing about that for sure. And well, we'll see y'all next week, whether it's Sunday or Monday, talking about that showcase. And whatever else is going on in the gaming world. Until then, everybody, we'll see you later.
All right. See ya.
Thanks.